West Liberty News, picking the lock on the shackles of tyranny.
It should be popping up here in just a moment on the broadcast. And there he is. We have Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, retired, the co-founder of Restore Liberty, restore-liberty.org, restore-liberty.org. And Darin is here as our first guest on Thursdays, and he has done some great work in his organization. He is, I think you've got some, have you already done the endorsements, Darin? Maybe that's what we'll talk, I don't know what we want to talk about today, but I think you guys do candidate endorsements. I see that pop up every now and then. At any rate, we're going to turn it over to you, Darin. You are off mute. Darin Gaub, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Jim. Good to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you. I'm doing very well. And yourself?
No complaints. Staying warm.
Excellent. Yeah, trying to stay warm. We had power outage yesterday. I missed yesterday's show. Got totally in the can because the power went out here. It's like tree apocalypse around Kalispell, man. I mean, down trees everywhere. We had like very wet and heavy snow, and there's power lines down, trees down, people falling on people's houses. At any rate, we're glad you're here today, and we're glad that we're still live. So over to you, Darin.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's one of the interesting things we've been working on lately is not necessarily tied directly to my organization, but it's tied to some of the efforts that have spun out of that. And I work with the group that is mostly, I guess, what we would call the Five Eyes: the New Zealand, Australia, Canada, US, the UK, I guess you could call it a small intelligence network and information network where we do a variety of things. But one of the things that we managed to pull off lately was had a person go directly into The Hague in the Netherlands and talk to the deputy director of the World Health Organization. And the deputy director of that organization was very thankful that the U.S. was pushing so hard to get an international pandemic treaty signed across multiple nations. And of course, our person there was not an American, although she came across very well as one. And they were very, very effusive in their support in thanking us for doing this. So I think it's worth people knowing that we're in Montana, we're working local news mostly. But unfortunately, what's happened is these kinds of organizations come out, and with authorities they pretend to have over individuals like us, even in Montana. And it's the result of actions on behalf of these kinds of organizations that people were running around with masks on their face that don't do them any medical good at all, or are being pushed to get this injection that is far more dangerous than it does any good. And the UN, in teaming up with the World Health Organization, is actually recruiting politicians in multiple countries to support. And you use that word however you want to, and whatever that means, to get them to push politicians in multiple countries to get a treaty like this signed, or an executive agreement, whatever you want to call it. And so it's just a continuation of the process of these global organizations to try to rule over you and me.
And people say, man, how can they get so many people involved in all this? I mean, how can they get so much participation? They bribe them. They pay them off. They just pay them off. They can print the money. I mean, what is it? Money's not billions. It doesn't make no difference to them. They just go in there and type a couple things on the computer. Hey, it's in your account. You're good to go. Yeah,
Yeah. Not naming names, but let's just say that you were to become a senator who was average income for a long time, and suddenly you're extraordinarily wealthy. I mean, how does that happen? I don't think there's any mystery to it at all, and with the political corruption. And that is not a party thing. That is on both sides.
That's
both
true.
Of them
You're right.
Rake in the money and are peddling influence and names, and that's why DC is a swamp.
And that's why I think, Darin, and we may have talked about this, that's why I don't believe that there is really a lot of effort on the people that are already already elected, our elected representatives, our servants. That's why there's not a lot of effort on their behalf, I think, to change it, because dependent upon the cycle and dependent upon the candidate, they benefit from from a little bit of rigging as well. I mean, both sides benefit from the rigging. I think it depends upon which cycle it's in. That's why I don't think that they have any will to change it, because it's profitable for them. I mean, as far as elections are concerned, it's really a really super corrupt, man. And Montana is really bad. It's so beautiful. What a dichotomy. It's so beautiful in Montana. I mean, if you've driven through here, and so, I mean, there's just breathtaking areas. But boy, what a seedy underbelly of corruption it also has, man. Worse than I ever thought it would.
Yeah, they're trying to flip us like Colorado, and it's been done. It's the same exact process, and to ignore it for everything from elections to dark money to poorly titled so-called conservation groups, because we were such a big fan of the outdoor here in Montana. Every single leftist group and Marxist organization that comes out there has things like conservation voters and things on it. So the game is being played here pretty well, and that's why one of Restore Liberty's messages that we've been really pushing out to folks is, okay, we're all kind of looking at this going, next week we're hoping for a red wave. Okay, if that happens, if you take more than one breath and think that suddenly things are under control and that you don't have to get back to work, then I would say that we failed, because this is in many ways like a theater. Yeah, it's at intermission. The lights go out, the curtains come across, they change some of the set, some of the actors and actresses swap around. You'll see some new faces and new furniture, but the script's already written from their perspective, and they know what the end is. So we have to say, okay, good, there was a red wave. So what? Let's keep going. We have more work to do now, because if we ever take our foot off the pedal, they will continue to destroy liberties and freedoms and everything that is what America truly stands for. And in Montana, everybody talks about Montana values only when they're trying to get elected. And then they go into the office and they act like they forgot all that. And that's the other trend that's going on now, is specifically with the Democrats, but a lot of Republicans too are doing this, step back from the language they've been using for the last few years, act moderate, look like that on their written things they mail out and on media. And then when they're elected, they go right back to where they were in crazy town and hope that no one's paying attention. We have to pay attention every day, and it's not an easy task.
And look how they were able to roll out the Patriot Act, how brilliantly that was. They did it under a Republican, quote-unquote, president, so all the Republicans stand down, and the lefties are statist anyway, so the more government and the more control, that's good for them. I mean, that was good. So they actually rolled out one of the most reprehensible, abuses on personal liberty that's ever been enacted in this country, was enacted under a Republican president. So I hope people don't forget that that's a uniparty, man. Believe it. I mean, it's this, Darin. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, brother.
Yeah, the uniparty must die, and it just must become we the people. And I'm involved in a lot of things Republican Party around Lewis and Clark County in the state, but that doesn't mean that it's my priority, or that I'm not just trying to do my best to give it a chance. But I would prefer there not be any parties. And when you get a ballot, you just get a name. But for now, you may as well, if you're going to have the parties, then the nonpartisan races anywhere need to go away. Every one of them. Because they're just lying to hide a record, I guess you could say, I don't want to declare that I'm one or the other. I just want to act like I'm nonpartisan and only interested in civic duty. Well, that's not the case here, especially in Lewis and Clark County. Our nonpartisan candidates, we know who they are. We know their voting records. We know their viewpoints. And so there is no such thing as nonpartisan right now. So for now, we have to remember that and look at the Open Democracy PAC funding clerk and recorder races in Gallatin County and Lewis and Clark County right now. That's a Soros-funded organization pushing clerks and recorders. And why are they doing that in two small counties in Montana? Well, there's so much money that they're like, well, we just got to keep spreading the corruption because we've been successful elsewhere. Let's really get into other places also. And if they can flip Montana into the Marxist category, they would consider that a huge win.
No, you're absolutely right, man. And it's people. I just, the judges, the courts, and the courts here just let it. I mean, there's no backing from them. It just has to be the people. I mean, we just have to say we're not going to put up with it anymore, Darin. I know it sounds like anarchy, but what other choice do you have? I mean, do you just continue to fall in lockstep and behind a corrupt system they're just abusing your liberties and abusing, your children don't have a future. I mean, either we fight this fight or our children do. I don't know what else to say, man. I mean, this got to be, it has to be everybody's priority, but they've captured a lot of folks, man. They've captured a lot of folks. That's for sure.
I was having a discussion with somebody the other day about how Arizona is putting shipping containers on the border to fill gaps between the fences. And the Biden administration is, of course, suing Arizona for doing that, while everybody's suing the Biden administration for failure to do their basic duties. And they were asking, how do you solve this one? I was like, well, it's pretty simple. There's this thing called the 10th Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, and the governors and the attorneys general and those kinds of officials have a responsibility. So if I was the Arizona Governor Ducey and Biden administration was suing me, I would just simply say, no, they're going to stay there. Well, we're going to take it to court. I don't care. They're going to stay there. Courts don't have any jurisdiction over, that kind of thing, because the greater law is the Constitution. We got to remember, right before the 10th is the 9th Amendment. It says that everything that's not spelled out, directly delegated to the federal government, that which isn't given to the states, if there's any question, then it belongs to the individual. We have to reassert those powers that are already owned. We don't have to create new ones.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Darin, Gaub, we're just running out of time here. People can find out more about you and your work over at restore-liberty.org. Do you have any even candidates that you care to? You've endorsed. You don't endorse a whole lot. I don't think you don't endorse. It's not an easy process to get an endorsement, I should say, from you guys. Anybody you want to specifically endorse here before we go ahead and close out, because we are coming up on the election next Tuesday?
I would say that locally, Matt Olson is a phenomenal candidate for the Montana State Senate. And if you can take a look at him, he's just one of those guys that you can trust. He's ethical, and I would love to put his name out there anywhere I can. And I look forward to seeing people like him join the Montana Senate or the legislature in other ways and grow back into being constitutional. And the last thing, if I could, is the Pachyderms Club in Great Falls. I'd like to endorse them as a great organization, and I'll have the pleasure of speaking to them on December 3rd this year at their annual banquet. And some of the messages are going to sound pretty familiar to anybody listening to this.
Yeah, I was there at that banquet last year. Told those folks, I said, hey, when you go there, if you don't mind, I won't be making it this year. Darin Gaub, always great to have you on the broadcast. Appreciate you being here, man. Look forward to talking to you next Thursday. Stay safe, my friend, and God bless you.
You too, Jim. Thanks. Keep the power on.
Thanks, bud. Yep. I hope to, man. That's the goal. Darin Gaub. All right, there goes Darin Gaub. Always great to have Darin on the show.